Howdy mates, good afternoon. Here's a part 2 video over at the Marie Selby Botanical Gardens. So, to be honest, this is one of my favorite parts of the gardens themselves. I say that just because just the variety of trees and that you can see here. And then, of course, your ferns and flowers. It's truly remarkable how all of these plants have that capability of producing such extravagant colors. And it's just something to be grateful for, because not everyone has the same pleasure. Especially when it comes to those who have color blindness. So, hold on just a second. Okay, I'm back. I had to refresh myself on a particular name. So, currently, a lot of the exhibits here at the Botanical Gardens are dedicated to the friendship of Patti Smith and Robert Mapplethorpe. Now, Patti Smith was she was a musician and a poet. Patti Smith, during her time, especially in the 70s, she played more of the punk-like rock. Whereas Robert Mapplethorpe, on the other hand, did more of photography, especially. That was his specialty. And he usually did black and white photos, but he had a particular practice of where in his images he would portray asymmetry and symmetry all in one image, yet still containing opposites. I know that's a little difficult to explain, but that's usually how most artistry is. Everyone has their own particular preference and impression that they usually go for. Guess you can't really know until you're that person, right? So here is actually it's like a wedding lawn. So if you look just out in the distance here, you can see a gazebo right there. That's usually where the couples get married with one another. I don't know. Part of me, don't get me wrong, I've enjoyed going to weddings, absolutely. But then at the same time, I'm one of those people where I'm oh, by the way, have you seen this recent educational video on one of my journeys? Yeah. It can be bittersweet, because you're happy for them, but then, I think it's just a naturally human feeling to have. Sometimes wishing you could have the same thing. Beside the point, here we have a well-known, desired type of landscape, especially in the United States. They call this a Duquesne lawn, or a wedding lawn. And unfortunately, lawns, since they've become so prevalent, they've actually posed a problem too. Usually, especially in Florida, a lot of people have, just grass on their lawns. But sometimes these grasses that they have may not necessarily be native. So in a sense, it's like a form of monoculture. And the problem is, with lawns, you're you're not really allowing other native vegetation or wildlife to also thrive. And oftentimes, to keep these types of lawns, usually pesticides and herbicides have to be applied. A great example of a herbicide is glyphosate, which is basically a form of phosphate. Fertilizer, basically. Unfortunately, the components making up the fertilizer, when a rainstorm occurs, for instance, they can leach their way into waterways and even bodies of water in the form of bays, and then eventually getting out into the ocean. So then that leads to another issue. So with excess nutrients making their way into the water, it can cause harmful algal blooms to occur. So obviously these algal cells, they need nutrients as a source of food to thrive. But the problem is, what happens when there's too much of it? It provides more opportunity for algal cells to multiply, reproduce exponentially. And that's when it leads to problems such as dead zones in the water. Because, these algal cells, they need they'll use oxygen, especially the microbes in the water. And usually what happens is these dead zones become absent in oxygen. And that essentially prevents our marine wildlife from thriving. And not only that, but they can also produce airborne toxins. So this specific case that I'm talking about, that's especially prevalent down here in Florida, is the red tide, made up of a dinoflagellate called the Carenia brevis. And I'm sure many of you have, of course, heard of it. 2018 was the worst year recorded. And it was a little apparent last year, too. So it does make one curious how it will be this year. So really, the point that I'm trying to make is, if you can, try to have some native plants at your home. Even try starting a native garden, to bring wildlife there. And the best part about native plants, too, they require no fertilizer and they require no watering, because most native plants, they have deep enough roots that go down into the soil to obtain the water that they need. So basically, they require little to no maintenance. And in return, you're also enriching your soil, and it's providing stability too. So that's one way that you can contribute to lessening the impact of fertilizer use. I would say it's a win-win, mates. Even I am trying to do the same thing. That's why I can't wait until one day I can have my own set of property, because then you can just do whatever it is you please. So, alright mates, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I know I want to get more in depth with it, but the thing is, this video is already reaching 10 minutes, and I know for a lot of you that is a little long. So I'm trying to not go too far in depth. But it's just crazy to think that these lawns were exercised in Europe, and yet they were passed over here. Because in Europe, it basically meant a sign of wealth. And in a sense, it's still kind of used that way to this day. But I don't really much care about wealth. What I care more about is wealth in knowledge. Absolutely. It's alright, you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. And Journey on a Journey is outwards. Take care, folks. See ya.